So, hello everyone. My name is Samar Parikh. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Pathfinder Health. Pathfinder Health is a digital app that provides all the necessary tools to support your child's development, track how they're doing, and then enhance their development as well. And we're focused on birth to 5 because actually that's the most critical age of your child's development and where we find that parents have the least amount of support. And so that's what we're here for. I'm excited to introduce you to Paul Patterson, who is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician and is also our co-founder and our chief medical officer here at Pathfinder Health. Paul, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Samar. It's great to be here today. Yes, again, I'm Paul Patterson, a developmental behavioral pediatrician. But I started out life a little bit differently. I started out as an engineer, and then through some lived experiences with my own child who has developmental disabilities, I became very interested in not only supporting child development in general, but learning more about how children develop and the science behind it. So much so that I went back to medical school and became a pediatrician and then the developmental and behavioral pediatrician.
That's great, Paul. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to introduce parents to this new framework that we've developed here at Pathfinder Health called PROE. Why don't you maybe start with an introduction into child development and the importance of the early years.
Sure. We know a lot about child development now. In fact, we realize that about 90% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5. So some of the most critical years of brain development, 90% to be exact, occur under the age of 5. And so we know that everything we can do to support a child's development during those critical periods allows for the best possible outcomes with respect to child development. One of the other things we've learned over the years is that children develop in a generally set pattern. That means that children will often do one thing first and then another thing. An example of that would be a child will typically sit before they crawl, and they'll do both of those things before they stand. Now, children achieve those milestones. It's slightly different. Development is an inherently individual process, but there's a range of normal in which those milestones are achieved. And when we say milestones, we're referring to individual tasks such as sitting or crawling or standing. But when we look further into how a child develops across the 4 developmental domains, and those 4 domains are motor domains, social, emotional, cognitive, and language. And when we look at how a child develops across those domains, we realize that while they follow a generally set pattern of development, we look to child development theories to more fully explain how they actually develop. And at Pathfinder Health, we looked at a lot of different child developmental theories and realized that no single theory adequately explains completely child development. Each theory has its inherent strengths and weaknesses. And there are numerous child developmental theories. And in looking at those theories, we found that given the sheer number of them, dozens and dozens of child developmental theories, that we were able to take the best of each of those theories and place it into the PROE framework, which simplifies and unifies kind of the explanation of child development across those domains. And the PROE framework stands for play, relationships, observation, and experience. And so the PROE framework explains, using child developmental theories, how children develop in each of the 4 developmental domains, which was the movement, language, cognitive, and social emotional. There are numerous theories, again, that help us to develop the PROE framework. And those include Gazelle's maturational theory, Erickson's psychosocial developmental theories, the behavioral learning theories, social emotional theories, attachment theory, and the list goes on. Freud. There's multiple theories that, again, each explain a part of child development, but not fully. And we aim to use the PROE framework to more fully explain child development in easily approachable terms.
It's great. I think the maybe you could go a little bit deeper into each of those theories, but I think what I really like about it is it takes all these really complex theories and it boils them down into four simple concepts that I think parents can all understand, right? Play, relationships, observation, and experience. So why don't we start with play and tell us a little bit about, how does that contribute to child development?
Sure, and I'll add some more. It just makes it easier for all of us to understand. Like when you read 12 or 15 or 17 child developmental theories, it's hard to like distill that down into something that's applicable to our daily lives. So when looking at the PROE framework, we'll start with play, and play is both a physical aspect where you can place your child in a sandbox and let them physically play in the sand or with toys, but it also ties into the creative and imaginary play that children do, as they learn to develop. And through play, children are not only learning how their bodies impact the environment around them, they're learning how to move. They're learning some of the social constructs in play as they get older, like you don't just rip a toy out of somebody else's hand. And so there's a lot of different aspects of play that help a child develop across all four domains of development.
And then let's talk about relationships.
Sure. And so when we talk relationships, one of the biggest theories that comes to mind that kind of explains how children develop using our relationship framework is attachment theory. And children have an attachment to their primary caregiver and others around them, close family members, their parents, whatever the case may be. And that attachment and the relationship that they have with that caregiver is the beginning and the foundation for so much more of their development, both in the social, emotional, developmental domain, and being resilient as they age, starting to develop, self confidence. All of those things stem from a firm and proper attachment to a caregiver. And so interacting with a child, back and forth play, just speaking to your child, doing things with your child, all of those things, regardless of their developmental age, are helping strengthen and build that relationship between you and your child, or others that are around your child, their grandparents, nannies, caregivers, whatever the case may be. Those relationships have huge implications for future development.
And observation and how that contributes to child development.
Sure. Observation, I think, Samar, is like one of the most interesting to me and like the most overlooked. But a child, when they're very young, really so much of their cognitive development is happening through their ability to observe the environment around them. So we'll think of a very simple motor milestone of sitting up. And it's a big deal when your child first sits up, but it's a hugely important milestone when we consider what it allows that child to do. Once they sit up, the environment around them looks different. They can see things around them now. They can turn their head side to side. So now they're able to observe what you're doing, watching you in the kitchen or doing chores around the house. They're always able to hear, smell, listening to the sounds around them, touching things. All of that is observation, tasting things. And so a child's development early on, and in fact, some of the first developmentally mature aspects of a child are their sensory systems. And so that's one of the first things in a child to develop or mature is their senses. And observation allows them to leverage all of those senses to take in the environment around them and then start to learn from that environment.
And then the last concept is experience. And how does that tie together and sort of complete PROE?
Sure. So experience is really the child experiencing the environment around them. And that comes from both not only using some of the other aspects of PROE that we mentioned, like observation and relationships and play, but also the exposure to new and different things. A great example would be a simple cause and effect toy. So a child might play with a simple cause and effect toy, But the experience of pushing a button and watching something pop up, or pushing a button and watching a color change, those are all experiences that the child hasn't had before, and develops a new understanding and learning from that. Taking your child to new environments, the first time they hear music, or the first time they go to a playground, all of those things are new experiences, and a child's leveraging all the aspects of their development and their ability to observe and take things in through these new experiences to really allow their cognitive growth, among other things.
Yeah, Paul, you mentioned a couple of times milestones, and so maybe can you talk a little bit more about milestones, why they're important, how to track, and why one should track them, and then pro and how the two are interrelated.
Absolutely. That's a lot to cover in a couple minutes. That's why we came up with the PROE framework as one thing, because it's a lot to distill down. But milestones are really those tasks that we watch children do over time as they develop. And again, I named a couple, but like the baby's first words, the first time they say mama or dad, those are all what we call milestones. The first time they sit up, the first time they take their first steps independently, again, are all examples of milestones. And again, we know that these occur in a generally set pattern. And so one thing will precede another. And then these things happen, these milestones happen within generally the same time frame. Now, not every child's going to do everything at exactly the same time, but we know a child's going to take their first steps, maybe from 10 to 15 months, or even beyond that, or a little bit earlier than that. But that's the general time frame in which we expect that milestone to happen. And if the milestone happens significantly outside of that generally accepted range of normal, that could indicate a problem with development and a reason to have further testing done. And so that's the reason we think it's important to keep track of milestones, to make sure that we're not missing any potential developmental delays. But beyond that, when you start to realize where your child is going with their development, it's a really powerful thing to understand how the achievement of one milestone leads to the development of the next milestone. And not only that, with that understanding, you can then support your child in obtaining the next milestone in their journey of child development. And we'll choose an example for that. Again, I love the sitting up example, because that opens up a whole new world to your child. And so when the child sits up for the first time, that in and of itself is a milestone that we really like to see, and is telling us that they're developing fine from a motor aspect. But that opens up the world around them to like seeing things differently, and taking in the environment differently. And so when they're sitting at the dinner table, for instance, in a high chair, and they can sit independently and turn their head from side to side and take everything in, they can watch what you're doing, and they can see what you're doing. And so all of that then leads to this explosive growth and like cognitive development. But your question also was like, how does PRO explain all of this? And so the PRO framework takes all of these different child developmental theories and explains how children develop in each of these domains. So it explains kind of like when your child does sit up, what are the things that you can do as a parent to help them attain their next milestone, which could be crawling, it could be first words. And there's a lot of different things we can do using the PRO framework to encourage the attainment of that next milestone. And so the example of sitting at the table, or sitting anywhere, your child might be sitting on the floor and watching you do laundry. Your ability to then talk to your child, say what you're doing. I'm now pulling out the red socks out of the laundry, showing them to your child. All of these things are hitting at different aspects of the PRO framework and encouraging your child's development. You could make it a game. You could show them two different colors of socks. You can start to play matching games. Your child can touch the clothes coming out of the dryer and feel that they're warm. Or if they're really young, they're just listening to your voice. They're seeing the way your lips move to make the language and the words that they're hearing with their ears. So all of these things are explained by the PRO framework and show you just on a daily basis how you can take these simple things to really encourage your child to not only enjoy their time with you from a relationship aspect, but support their attainment of the next milestone.
I think that that's so powerful. And when you first introduced this concept to me, what really struck out with me is that, or struck, really struck, helped me really understand this is that, let's talk about sitting. The universe just opens up. Crawling, now independently, they can reach you if they need something. And so, like, crawling is a motor milestone, but it actually contributes to, through relationships building, right? They need you, they come to you. And so now you're developing social, emotional, even cognitive. They can explore new things and experience and observe new things. And so, how all of these milestones, in some ways, are actually interrelated, even though they're classified among these domains. I think what's powerful is that PRO is fairly straightforward framework for parents to understand. Maybe you could talk about how to incorporate it into everyday life. And since there are four concepts, do parents have to balance them, or how to incorporate them maybe across the board?
Oh, that's a great question, and kind of what we aim to do is allow parents and caregivers to leverage the PRO framework to their advantage and support child development. And so, how to this isn't like a task list that you have to do every day, for instance. And in fact, when we think about it, and just looking at the example I gave previously about doing a common chore around the house, whether it be making dinner or doing laundry, really can touch on all four aspects of the PRO framework. You could be playing with your child. Your child is interacting with you, strengthening that relationship. They're observing what you're doing. They're experiencing new things, touch, smells, sights, and sounds. And so you're really just as a parent, you're doing many of these things already. So we don't mean for it to be like another thing you got to check off your list, but it can also help frame what you do. And so if you think about these chores and you're like, I got to get these chores done, and I can't do that with my child present, maybe rethink that and say, hey, with the PRO framework is actually encouraging you to do all of those common things with your child. Because there's so many little wins that you can have on a daily basis, and just the things that you're already doing to support your child's development. So that's how we really think of the PRO framework. Is it's not you got to check off a PROE event every day, but more of a framework for you to look at. What am I doing already with my child, and celebrate those wins, and are there opportunities for me throughout the day to engage with my child in maybe ways that I hadn't considered.
No, I think obviously a lot of our parents are super busy. Some of them work, at least one job, or maybe even multiple. And so there's this concept of like, it's not just about the amount of time you spend with your child, but also what you do with them while they're with you. And so, if you only have an hour or two a day to spend with your child, the ability to say, hey, let's spend some time playing. Let me incorporate observational activities within play, or help them experience new things, take them for a walk, being able to see something new, take them to the playground. And that, if you only have a little bit of time, how do you incorporate all four of those? And that's really increasing the quality of time spent together. In conclusion, Paul, do you have any parting thoughts?
Well, I would say child development is an amazing thing to watch happen with your child, to be a part of, and you're probably already doing so many things that you're not even considering that you're doing to support your child's development. So we just encourage you to continue doing what you're doing with your child. Take a look at the PRO framework and find the aspects of PRO that could be beneficial to you and your child's development. And we just want to encourage all parents to take a step back, relax, enjoy your time with your child. There's so many different things out there, so many different sources of information that'll tell you absolutely have to do these 10 things with your child, or these 10 things. And we want to kind of separate from that noise and just say, you're probably already doing a fabulous job with child development, and here's just a couple other tips to really help your child reach their maximum developmental potential.
Well, Paul, thank you so much. And thank you for the rest of the clinical team in developing this. I hope that parents find that extremely helpful. If you have more questions, you can read more about it on our website. download the app, Pathfinder Health. We're both on the App Store as well as Google Play. And if you need ideas, obviously there are some activities that all of us do with our children, but we have hundreds of different activities, things that you do on a daily basis. But if you could just take it one step further, how much more could you potentially enhance that time together? So thanks again to our viewers. And we'll be doing a series of videos. We'll go deeper into PROE, and we'll also start discussing other salient topics that are important for parenting and the different life stages of a child. So thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.